The icy water of the Hudson River had already numbed Vivian Chen's limbs by the time she realized she was going to die. Not from drowning, though that was certainly imminent, but from the bitter irony of it all. Vivian Chen, the untouchable CEO of Chen Industries, who'd built a tech empire from nothing, who'd faced down hostile takeovers and boardroom coups without flinching, was going to die because she'd been too proud to admit she couldn't swim. The corporate gala had been insufferable, as they always were. Another night of forced smiles and strategic conversations, of men twice her age explaining her own industry to her, of whispered speculation about whether the Ice Queen would ever settle down. At 34, Vivian had heard it all. She'd stepped onto the yacht's deck for air, her champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand, not from the cold, but from exhaustion she'd never admit to feeling. She didn't remember falling. One moment she was leaning against the railing, and the next, the black water was swallowing her whole. The designer gown that had cost more than most people's monthly salary became an anchor, dragging her down. She thrashed, her mouth filling with river water that tasted of salt and diesel and death. Above her, the yacht's lights blurred into distant stars she'd never reach. Then something grabbed her. Strong arms wrapped around her chest, hauling her upward with fierce determination. She broke the surface gasping, choking, clinging to her savior like he was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become liquid and lethal. "I've got you," a deep voice said against her ear. "Stop fighting me, I've got you." She stopped struggling, letting him tow her toward the riverbank. The current fought them every inch of the way, but he was relentless, his strokes powerful and sure. When they finally reached the concrete embankment, he lifted her bodily out of the water, settling her on the cold stone before pulling himself up beside her. Vivian collapsed forward, vomiting river water onto the ground, her entire body shaking violently. She felt a warm hand on her back, rubbing circles between her shoulder blades. "That's it, get it all out," the voice said. "You're okay. You're safe now." When she could finally breathe without choking, Vivian looked up at her rescuer. He was black, probably in his early 30s, with close-cropped hair and dark eyes that held a mixture of concern and relief. Water dripped from his face, from the soaked dress shirt that clung to broad shoulders. He'd lost his shoes somewhere in the river, and there was a cut on his cheek that was bleeding sluggishly. "Thank you," Vivian managed, her voice raw. "You saved my life. Just glad I saw you fall." He stripped off his wet jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "I'm Marcus Williams." Vivian Chen. If he recognized her name, he didn't show it. Instead, he was already pulling out a waterlogged phone, cursing softly when it wouldn't turn on. "We need to get you to a hospital. You could have hypothermia, or..." "No hospitals," Vivian said sharply. The last thing she needed was this story hitting the news. "I'm fine, really." Marcus gave her a look that suggested he thought she was insane, which, given that she was sitting in a soaked evening gown on a riverbank in October, refusing medical attention, was probably fair. "At least let me call you a car," he said. "Your phone is dead." "Yours." Vivian looked down at her left wrist, where her $1,000 smartwatch had been. The river had claimed it. Her clutch, with her phone and ID, was probably floating somewhere near Staten Island by now. "Gone," she said, and then, to her absolute horror, she started to cry. Not delicate tears, but huge, gasping sobs that shook her entire frame. She'd nearly died. She'd actually, genuinely almost died, and nobody at that party had even noticed she was missing. They were probably still up there, networking and drinking champagne and discussing quarterly earnings while she'd been drowning. Hey, it's okay," Marcus said, and then his arms were around her again, pulling her against his chest. He smelled like river water and something clean underneath, and Vivian, who couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her, buried her face in his wet shirt and wept. They sat like that for a long time, until Vivian's tears ran dry and the shaking subsided to occasional tremors. When she finally pulled back, Marcus didn't comment on the mascara she'd undoubtedly smeared all over his shirt. "I live about 10 minutes from here," he said quietly. "You can clean up, use my phone, get some dry clothes. No pressure, but you need to get warm." Every instinct Vivian had screamed that this was a bad idea. She didn't know this man. He could be anyone. But she was freezing, exhausted, and the thought of trying to flag down a cab looking like a drowned rat was more than she could handle. Okay, she whispered. Thank you. Marcus's apartment was in a modest building in Brooklyn, a fourth-floor walk-up that made Vivian's legs burn by the time they reached his door. Inside, it was small but immaculately clean, with children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets and a stack of library books on the coffee table. I have a daughter, Marcus explained, following her gaze. Maya, she's 6. She's with my mom tonight. You're married? Vivian asked, then immediately felt stupid for asking. Widowed, Marcus said simply. 3 years now. Bathroom's down the hall. I'll find you something to wear. The bathroom was tiny, the mirror crowded with Disney princess stickers and a step stool decorated with flowers. Vivian caught sight of herself in the glass and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her carefully styled hair hung in wet tangles, her makeup was smeared across her face like war paint, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked human, vulnerable, nothing like the polished CEO who'd walked onto that yacht. Marcus knocked softly, passing her a stack of clothes through a cracked door. Best I could do. They'll be too big, but they're warm and dry. The sweatpants had a drawstring she pulled tight, and the NYUT shirt hung nearly to her knees. There were thick socks that were probably Marcus's, and she pulled those on too, grateful for anything that might stop her shivering. When she emerged, Marcus had changed into dry clothes and was making tea in the kitchen. Chamomile okay. It's mostly what I have. Maya's not big on variety. Chamomile is perfect. They sat on his couch, wrapped in blankets, drinking tea from mismatched mugs. Vivian couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so comfortable in someone else's space. So, Marcus said eventually. Do you want to talk about it? About what? About why you were crying like that. I've pulled a few people out of the water before, used to be a lifeguard, and usually they're just scared. You seemed something else. Vivian stared into her tea. She should deflect, should thank him politely and call her assistant and get back to her real life. Instead, she heard herself saying, I was thinking that nobody at that party even noticed I was gone. The yacht party. Yes, it was a fundraiser. Tech industry thing. I was supposed to give a speech. She laughed without humor. They probably just thought I ducked out early. Tomorrow someone will make a joke about the Ice Queen melting. The Ice Queen. That's what they call me. Because I'm focused, professional. Because I don't date or socialize or do anything except work. She pulled the blanket tighter. I built my company from nothing, you know. Absolutely nothing. I was a scholarship kid from Flushing who taught herself to code in the public library. Now I have 3,000 employees and offices in 6 countries, and I'm so lonely I could scream. The words hung in the air between them. Vivian had never said that out loud before, had barely admitted it to herself. I get it, Marcus said quietly. After Rebecca died, my wife, I threw myself into work too. I'm a social worker, and there's always more cases, more families who need help. It was easier than going home to an empty house. Than being a single parent who had no idea what he was doing. Is it still hard? Every day. But Maya makes it worth it. She's this little ball of chaos and joy, and she asks about a million questions before breakfast, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. You should meet her sometime. She'd be impressed that I saved a CEO. I'd like that, Vivian said, and was surprised to find she meant it. They talked through the night, as the sun rose over Brooklyn and painted Marcus's small living room in shades of gold. Vivian learned that he'd become a social worker because his own father had been incarcerated when Marcus was young, and he'd seen how the system failed families who needed help. Marcus learned that Vivian had built her company on software that helped small businesses manage their finances, because she'd watched her own mother struggle with the accounting for her tiny restaurant. I never talk about this stuff, Vivian admitted as dawn broke. Not with anyone. Maybe you should, Marcus said. Maybe the Ice Queen thing is just armor, and underneath you're just Vivian. She looked at him, this man who'd saved her life without knowing who she was, who'd given her tea and warmth and asked for nothing in return. And she made a decision that terrified her. Will you stay if I undress? The words came out before she could stop them, raw and honest in a way she'd forgotten how to be. Marcus's eyebrows rose. What? Not like that, Vivian said quickly, her cheeks burning. I mean, if I take off the armor. If I stop being the CEO and just be myself? Just Vivian. Will you still want to know me? Or was it just the novelty of saving someone's life? Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. He set down his mug and took her hand, his fingers warm and calloused against her own. Vivian, he said seriously. I jumped into the Hudson River in October to save a stranger. I think I can handle getting to know the real you. And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. The next 3 months were the strangest of Vivian's life. She went back to work, to the endless meetings and strategic decisions and corporate warfare. But now, 3 nights a week, she had dinner at Marcus's apartment. She met Maya, who was exactly as chaotic and wonderful as Marcus had promised, and who declared that Vivian needed to learn how to braid hair properly if she was going to keep visiting. Marcus came to her penthouse apartment exactly once, looked around at the stark minimalist decor in the floor-to-ceiling windows, and said, "You don't really live here, do you? You just exist here." He wasn't wrong. Slowly, carefully, Vivian started to change. She hired a deputy CEO to handle some of the day-to-day operations. She started leaving work at 6 instead of 9. She went to Maya's school play and felt her heart crack open when the little girl spotted her in the audience and waved frantically. And she fell in love with Marcus Williams, though she didn't realize it until the night he asked her to stay for dinner and she realized she'd rather be in his cramped kitchen, helping Maya set the table, than anywhere else in the world. But loving someone meant being vulnerable, and vulnerability was terrifying. "You're sabotaging this," her therapist said, because yes, Vivian had finally started seeing a therapist. "You're looking for reasons why it won't work instead of letting yourself be happy." "What if he realizes I'm too much work?" Vivian asked. "Too damaged, too human," her therapist interrupted gently. "Vivian, the only person who thinks you need to be perfect is you." That night, Vivian showed up at Marcus's apartment unannounced. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt with a pasta sauce stain, Maya already asleep in her bedroom. "I'm terrified," Vivian said without preamble. "I'm terrified of losing you. Of not being enough. Of being too much. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone's partner or a parental figure or anything except a CEO, and I'm scared I'm going to screw it up." Marcus pulled her inside, closing the door behind her. "You think I'm not scared? Vivian, I'm a single dad who works for the city and barely makes rent some months. You're a billionaire. You could have anyone, and I keep waiting for you to realize you could do so much better than me." "There is no better than you," Vivian said fiercely. "You saved my life, Marcus. Not just in the river, you saved me from drowning in myself." "Then maybe we're both scared and doing this anyway," Marcus said. He took her hands. "Maybe that's what love is. Showing up even when you're terrified." "I love you," Vivian whispered, and it was the first time she'd said it out loud. "I love you too," Marcus said. "The real you. The one who cries and laughs and burns pancakes when you're trying to make breakfast for Maya. The one who's brilliant and driven and also kind of a mess sometimes. All of it." They stood in his small entryway, holding each other as the city hummed outside. And Vivian realized that this cramped apartment with its sticky floors and refrigerator art, this man who saw her completely and loved her anyway, this little girl asleep down the hall who'd asked if Vivian could be her bonus mom, this was worth more than every success she'd ever achieved. She had undressed. She'd taken off the armor, the titles, the walls she'd built so carefully. And Marcus had stayed. 6 months later, Vivian stood in front of her company's board of directors and announced she was stepping back from day-to-day operations. She'd still be CEO, still guide the company's strategic direction, but she was done sacrificing her life for her work. "I almost drowned once," she told them. "I'm not doing it again." That night, she went home, to the house she'd bought in Brooklyn, close enough to Marcus's apartment that Maya could walk between both places. It wasn't a penthouse, but it had a yard where Maya could play and a kitchen big enough for family dinners and windows that let in actual sunlight. Marcus was already there, cooking dinner while Maya did homework at the kitchen table. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Good," Vivian said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Really good, Vivian," Maya called. "Can you help me with my math? Dad's terrible at fractions." "I'm a social worker, not a mathematician," Marcus protested. "Coming, sweetheart," Vivian said, and as she sat down next to the little girl who was